2 weeks, and no word from her. I looked in the P.O. box every day with great anticipation, checked mailboxes, waited by the telephone. It was evident that the woman I had loved madly, secretly, and hopelessly for the riper part of 2 decades did not care to respond. Instead, as I was lying on the beach reading Teachings of an Initiate on a Saturday afternoon, the surf answered. A vague flashing I could make out in the smog at the ocean's edge, teetering slantwards toward me with the tide's determinate motion, and finally thrown up just beyond the tide line, directly at my feet, as I somehow sensed it would. The dense body of a decapitated seal. The seal had become my responsibility. My intuition gleaned this, and I stopped my reading where compassion meant success, and momentarily thought, and tried to address myself to the problem of the seal for the first time. As animal nature leads us to intuition in the spirit which surrounds, I faintly hoped that the tide would take it out, or a swell would come and wash the seal away, for I knew deeply that I had just been singled out among mortals to remove the seal, and faintly understood that for unknown, occult reasons, no one else could. But the sun was setting, and what is a minute of reflection in the face of grand repetitive cycles? I went for a swim and forgot about the seal, but mildly vowed to do something if it was still there on the morrow. The morning sun had risen with clarity, and I was on the beach early. My first thoughts of the day were on her and had driven me into a mild fury. The seal still remained, directly beneath our house on the bluff. I had to run back the length of my walk to the break to catch a strangely familiar black female park ranger practicing her right of equal opportunity employment by picking up all the paper and none of the glass, an oversight we have noticed from these sands. Okay, Scarlett O'Hara Washington, there's a carcass of a dead seal lying about 200 yards down the beach with its head cut off. Heaven's sakes! We'll just have to see what we can do. Can't have such trash in the neighborhood, can we? I returned to the seal. Somehow, even without a face to peek, the heap of flesh seemed to speak to me, imposing limits on the conditions of my life. But the seal could not understand, devoid of sense or nerve, and I could not communicate, only observe. I walked back down the beach to the break in front of our house. They followed a while later in their truck, looked down at the seal as if to wish it luck, and took off. The seal remained. And my thoughts harassed me. Death begins as a conspiracy of the desires, and mine began so young, but not as young as hers. What never could be consummated as desire frustrated reveals the hatred, anything in love but ifs and weres, vanity, selfishness, idiocy, Lust turned our would-be puppy love to dust. And oh, so much for trust. Somehow, Patty girl, you just had to see why the best man wasn't me. Now, that's a ritual, so I wrote you a poem, and it wasn't marriage, and there was no baby in the carriage. And that evening we swam after picking fruit, and the seal still remained dead on the beach. The brute in us we had dredged up from the past, and you could not let go at first, and I middle and last. Whether you followed me to this planet or the worst in your own nature, I would hesitate to bet on the weather. And why did you lie with every guy you could get your hands on while I was on the scene just goes to show I had no possession over the scheme, though I yearned for possession, my obsession. The next day was Labor Day, Monday, and 90 degrees and no breeze, and somebody said the seal would stink to high heaven by the end of it. We worked. We drove into the city, not the one where she lived, the other, like Sodom and Gomorrah. The vision of our sin closing in on us reminded one of the necessity of sunglasses in Southern California. Damned. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Expensive sorrow. We returned at eve to revel in the stench of the seal, which by ascension was tincturing the atmosphere with a dank, oily, fermenting putrefaction of the air, and as all things in evolution, forming its putrid archetype within our very lair. What was this nightmare, and how to be freed of its grip? Was it our shipwreck relationship which never could float? Or that for a while in life we both had to take the same boat? What stunk so bad that 20 years later the stink of it should still be driving me mad? There must have been something to someone that was too dear, for I can assure you there's something rotten here. What was my fate, my dear, exquisite Patty Kate? From the start, the heart of an actress and the mind of a soldier, I'd always known you'd love an actor's heart. What would satisfy? I don't know. Battalion style? Some things just have to go. The smokescreen tactic? Men, 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 other men, other men, other men. You loved so many of them. Never could quite find that one, though you kept trying, and I kept crying. Other men, other men, other men, other men, other men, men, men. Maybe I could have won you in the end, had I moved into town, ripped off a friend, and hired out as a clown. He was slapped. Men, 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 men. But then, old guts and refinement, with your heart of cement, how could I have satisfied you? Withdrawn in our pride, like the perihelion tide, exposing myriads of thousands of Dead Sea corpses, 500 miles of sands, extincting all life in the visible ocean. Why, We'd have to walk halfway to China, you and I, to find a wave to ride, or even touch the tide. Oh, the lunar powers tear at us and wreck the very consistency we are striving for. They called you whore, and without asking, I believed them. Whore, whore, whore. That you could stand before me evermore. O times that I adore. We took a vote and decided that since nobody had volunteered to remove the eye and nose sore from our threshold, we would initiate a campaign. For if not democracy, then why not bureaucracy? The American way shall have its say, for if democracy seem to fail, then let bureaucracy prevail. Bureaucracy! Bureaucracy! No wrastlin' without hasslin'. No suppression without depression. No evasion without invasion. No escape without rape. And no concessions without preservatives to please the conservatives. Let's wrap that rotted hunk of dead flesh up in red tape and haul it back to Albertson's supermarket where it belongs. It has been 4 days since the seal was laid at our doorstep by the hand of God, or whatever power you attribute these things to. Let us applaud. I had prayed for a swell Tuesday night, and the swell came, but the seal doth remain. We called the sanitation division, the parks department, the health department, and finally made out a contract with the dead animal pickup crew. We even suggested that the boys who sleep down by the outhouse might like a little seal stew. But no. By late Wednesday afternoon, the seal still sat, reeking in the glory of its deteriorating fat, and the hour had passed for seeking. It was in the waning of that day that I put child's things away and confronted the seal for what I prayed would be the last time. I stood before the stinking mass. I had hoped the dreadful thing would have passed away on its own, but it didn't. Finally, I had the hulk within my grasp and began to drag it down the beach. And as I squeezed its little tail fins with the vital juices running down my legs, I could not help imagining that this is how it could have been had I blown your head off and was dragging your mangled body to my car. But more than alas, I had not gone too far before the smell overcame me, and I ain't kiddin'. I could hang on to the seal no more. I left it beneath an apartment building which housed about 40 people, figuring in complete error of my human way, that so great a cloud of witnesses would not endure that foulness for another day. But should I have dragged it the other way? I could not say, but rushed to make hay with the waves, and swam like Lady Macbeth in her raves, for still the odor would not leave my hands. And in my heart I must concede, feeling the utter hopelessness of Candide, who lived in many lands and loved in vain, and yet spoke not a word of pain. Thursday morn. Through chemical washings, convenience of this modern world, the nausea had left my hands, and the seal had been borne away by the spirit of the night, perhaps, our unholy reverie in senseless change. Whether intellectual chains or chains of passion, which brought me here, I do not know. Only that it has come and gone like a dream, and I have only dreams to show. Parts, beginnings and ends, but nothing of the whole. I cannot make amends for the answers of my soul.